everybody, and welcome back. This is the Overpower Mountain Podcast, and I am your host, Marcel, the greatest Overpower player ever. Well, I'm glad to have y'all here. It's been an interesting week in the Overpower world. It seems quiet. It seems, dare I say, a little too quiet out there these days. LRG is quiet. The NAOL seems quiet. But yet, a flurry of things are occurring. And I imagine, just like me, your excitement is palpable out there. I'm sure I can even feel it through the actual screen. Well, I'm not going to be quiet. Okay. We got a big episode to get to. And as you all know me, we're definitely going to do some chatting. But first, as always, you know how I start the show out, and that is Overpower. Overpower News. All right, so here we go. So first off, we have a clarification of last week. I know I was saying LRG is on track for their schedule of delivery of the ERB set. They still are, as of their last posting. I just wanted to maybe clarify something because I think I was saying some dates and people might have just got lightly confused about what was going on. So essentially what I had said last week is that everything was under delivery schedule, and by mid-March the cards were going to be done and shipped. What I was referencing is they were going to be shipped to their, I guess, fulfillment center. And then from the fulfillment center, they will package all of our orders and then they will ship them out from there to you and me. So I mentioned mid-March. Yes, they're going to get the cards by mid-March, but then the delivery, I imagine, is going to probably end up going till about mid-April. At this point in time, that's really only 30, 40 days away from now. You'll actually have the physical cards in your hand. This is exciting. I mean, I can only imagine the way other people are feeling, but we've talked about it several times on the podcast, and I'm just flat out excited to get new cards, open packs, much like all of you. I'm probably going to do a couple break episodes where, we break some cards together and you get to see them. And, I can only hope that everybody out there gets everything that they're looking for. There's been some interesting chat as well about what people are thinking about doing with their cards and cards that they bought, whether to hold boxes for collection purposes, whether to open them all, whether the Kickstarter will be rarer than the aftermath. You will not know this for quite some time. Anybody that, tries to do this sort of idea now with like Pokemon and stuff like that, you're going to realize quite quickly that you're going to hold the box for a medium exorbitant amount of time. I'm not talking like original Overpower to today. I'm actually shocked that you can even still find like classic or X-Men boxes. Like those to me, I guess even Image, those to me, those cards are just so incredibly rare, especially to get in a sealed format. And I think very shortly you're actually going to see the cards jump in a major price, as well as which will just drive up sealed product to probably a ridiculous amount. I am not going to tell you one way or the other in terms of how I think of what you should do in terms of holding boxes and so on. I would just say I know there's a lot printed before for the Kickstarter as well as after. So, choose your own adventure. You bought these cards to really open them. If you bought them to invest, you're probably going to be sitting for, maybe 2-3 years, depending what IPs come, depending how many players join. And then ultimately, that set gets pushed into a golden age of theirs. So all of these things have to be taken into consideration. Will people play a lot of Golden Age? Will people play, straight modern for the rest of the time? So keep that in mind as you're thinking about, your rarity, what you're going to open, and everything along those lines. I know for a fact I merely bought an additional starter deck of each one, which I will keep sealed because I know I only need to open one. But past that, I'm gonna crack every box I have. I can't personally have like a sealed box up on my cabinet, and I'm just gonna stare at it all day because I'm just gonna totally imagine that the Zeus rare alternate that I'm dying to have is in there, or you know the Tarzan card I want. I could never. Hopefully, ultimately, I can just pick another one up. Not really in the news, kind of just more of like people were chatting about it. Those are my thoughts in terms of that. So, as we continue on, though, two recent statements actually came out this week from Joe CEO. Um, the first one is the deck builder, the portal that everybody is excited for, which should be open and available within weeks. He did actually say this about a week ago. So I imagine, at this point in time, you're probably looking at any sort of day now that you're going to end up getting this sort of portal opening. Now, what that entails is a ton of things. Obviously, they promise, but the main thing that you will get is it's the point where you're going to get access to every card that's in the set. Now, you're not going to get to see alternate heroes and so on, but you are ultimately going to get to see every card that's in the ERB set, at least the actual card text of everything. So, and the stats, and I imagine at least the base version of every character. So, it's going to be an exciting moment. I'll keep you very up to date on that as we move forward. The second bit of news that came out this week was the Holy OP rulebook. 7+ years in the making. I'm assuming all of the OP apostles have written an amendum or a text in this, Holy OP rulebook that we have. This Tomb of Knowledge will be out, and I quote from, again, Joe CEO, within days. I personally am looking forward to this. Anybody who got the Kickstarter, I'm not sure if it was a certain level, but past that, anybody who got the Kickstarter will actually be getting this rulebook in a printed format of some sort. So, very, very shortly, we will sort of get to look forward to this read. And basically, at the end of the day, like I said, quiet week in the OP world. So not much news past that. Rulebook within days and portal within a week or so. And ERB cards within 30 to 40 days in your hands. In your hands, friends. That's right. We're going to be talking about it. We're going to be trading. We're going to be talking characters. We're going to be doing a lot. And friends, that's the news. Overpower, overpower, overpower news. I kind of brought up the rule book as my final talk in the news there because it segues very neatly into my OP topic this week. A lot of people, as we always say, you don't come here for the news, you come here for the knowledge. And I've been watching a lot of film lately on Overpower, as I always do, because, I'm addicted to this game, just like a lot of you who are watching my podcast right now. And I do thank you for that. I truly hope that you are still enjoying this content. I really try to make it for fans of the game. I don't try to put agendas on too many things. And, I essentially watch these back myself as a fan, and try to separate that it's me. It's quite enjoyable, actually. I did find that my episode last week ran a little bit long in the grand scheme, so we're going to start to move things in terms of this conversation. So the OP topic I decided this week was rules, and more rules. So Obviously, as this rule book eventually gets released, obviously, as we move into this new era of overpower, a lot of rules are going to be shifting. Both, of course, in the modern game, might even appear a little bit different than you would know overpower, but also ultimately in the legacy game and how new cards, new wording, new rulings will ultimately affect that game. We're not going to get into it until I have a definitive rule set that I can, push towards you, the audience. The only thing I will say is I truly enjoy all of the community effort on Discord. I truly enjoy all the conversations when it comes to rulings, how this card works, how that card works, potential of everything. And honestly, you out there are doing amazing work. I can't express the conversations that continuously come up. I know, and I'm just going to reference him as Florida Josh, but I know Josh out there has quite an amazing grasp of the new rule set as well as the old set, and a lot of players do. From newer players like Justin and even old school players, obviously holding a lot of that knowledge down. So I think what I'm going to really kind of get into today is not, the nuances and changes that are happening because I don't know them as of yet. I think what I'm going to get in today is a lot of players are starting to venture into the legacy format. And this format obviously again will change with new rules that are upcoming. Um, but of course, with that aforementioned, Holy Bible of Dave's decrees. Uh, however, there are three obscure rules or sort of base standard situations that, in my visual, as I mentioned, watching a lot of video this week, I noticed um, a wrong ruling completely. I noticed, you know, scenarios that I think people just don't understand fully. And, that's what I'm here to do. I'm always here to try to sort of like give you a little edge knowledge for whenever you're playing in a tournament or at home. Not only to give you the edge over your opponent, but ultimately just to give you the knowledge set. Uh, so I think what we're going to talk about today, like I said, is three obscure rules or base situations that um, kind of just people need to understand a little bit better. So just before I get into them, to note, that judges in the current events are often players in tournaments. And, I've expressed to you how hard a tournament is mentally for a lot of people. And, having a lot of that situation, um, you know, in your mind, you're already thinking about your next game. You're already thinking about the next situation. And ultimately, you know, to all of a sudden in the middle of your game get called judge, and then you have to go make a ruling. You have to try to understand the situation. You have to try to put yourself in those shoes. You have to understand the meta rules. You have to understand the angles and the different things along those lines. I have to say personally that, you know, I commend all the people who judged. Making a wrong decision in the middle of a tournament is not the end of the world. We've all made bad calls. We've all done things that aren't correct. But the way I look at it is it doesn't mean that we don't correct the situation and talk about it and move forward. So, first up is actually one of my favorite obscure rules that occurs. So, this will be number one, I guess. The Pyrrhic or spiritual victory. So, a lot of people don't truly grasp or understand what that is. So there is a way in Overpower that even though all of your characters get killed, ultimately what you're going to see is you can actually win the game, but through venture. So this is the moment that occurs when player A kills player B's last character. However, player B ventured for the win and actually won the venture in that round that his last character was killed. Now, when a game is finished, you look at missions first. Did anybody complete it? Then you look at characters left, right? So always a mission win outweighs killing all of the other characters on the other person's team. So ultimately player B wins in that exact scenario that I just gave you. So a couple things here. Once player B's last character is killed, okay? So player B, his final character gets killed, okay? In this situation, the round immediately ends. No, you cannot negate or remove anything off your side of the board to then put yourself in a venture situation to be ahead of them. The round is just over once all characters are dead. No, you cannot attack the battle site with Little Colossus and try to get the -4 to put yourself ahead in venture. The round immediately ends when that last character is KO'd. So everything has to happen before you kill that character. So as player A in that scenario, you actually have to look at the scenario and be like, okay, he just landed an 8 on me. I need to get 8 venture before that kill shot gets down, or at least the kill shot that gets down puts me over that 8 venture. There's so many scenarios where, a newer player doesn't even understand this rule. An older player ventures for the win, throws a 7. They take it because whatever they want to do, and then they throw a 3 back, and you immediately take it, kill your character, and you say, I win. And then, the newer player's like, what? No, I just killed your last character. And then you get into the whole Pyrrhic and spiritual victory. So the key to this idea is, A, when all characters on one person's team die, round is over, period. No further actions may continue at that particular point in time. So a funny side note to this as well is there's also a fine rule in OverPower where if your opponent or yourself have no frontline characters, the round also immediately ends. Now, what I'm referencing is, they could kill all of your frontline characters, you could onslaught kill your last character, or whatever the scenario may be. In that scenario, the round immediately ends as well. It's actually an overpower rule in the rule book. I'm looking at you here, Dazzler. I know you can be pushing people back into reserve. I mean, you could even possibly try to use that in a weird strategic fashion. Now, I know people are like, well, no, what if I have a 6 that can attack the reserve? No, the round's over. Once that last character moves into reserve, the round is over. It's actually just a weird rule. I don't agree with it, but it is the rule and it is the precedent, right? So that's how we have to move forward until we get a new rule book that may state otherwise. But as of right now, that's, a very weird and obscure offshoot rule, and I just mention it in the Pyrrhic victory because ultimately, if all your characters are dead, round is over. If you have no more frontline characters, round is over. So, interesting sort of first rule, obscure, yes, a little bit different, but one thing I want new players to know that just because, you're down to your last character or 2, if you actually had a decent sort of game so far, you actually could just try to position yourself for that one last glory hand, push it for the win, give them as many cards as he humanly can take, and then ultimately you just got to land enough venture that the kill shot to you doesn't surpass that venture. Really interesting rule. I think a lot of people, especially new players, started dabbling in the legacy concept, are probably, don't know it that well, or if they kind of know, now you know. So as we move on to number 2, The second scenario or obscure rule that I've sort of thought up is I start attacking your battle site. What can I use to defend my battle site? It's simple. It's actually ridiculously simple. The rules are clear. You may use power cards and you may use activators. It sounds like such a simple thought. But then you start to get into all these weird questions and you go, okay, so here we go. And I love that people are, chiming in right now in terms of, the comment section. And I'm sure all these thoughts, we all had these games that happened and scenarios and thoughts. So it's really interesting. Please, always discuss and comment in the comment section. I know a lot of people, when they watch these back, they actually read through the comment section at the same time and sort of, it all meshes into this beautiful, overarching thought as opposed to just me talking to you straight. So when you're defending a battle site, people's first reaction is, you know, I have a spawn 1 to 9 and you're attacking my battle site. I block it with that. Again, it's very clear. You can only defend your battle site with power cards and activators in the grand scheme. Okay? So what happens when, again, no, you cannot use a spawn 1 to 9 from your team to defend. No, a master mold from your team can't be used to stop that power card that attacks your battle site. However, a unique thing is when someone attacks your battle site with a special card, the negate, whether it's on your team, placed, or in hand, can actually offensively get rid of that special off the top. Now, again, offensively remove that special off the top. So if they attack your battle site with a special card, no, that negate in your hand, even though the way it's worded, cannot defend your battle site. Offensively, it can get rid of that special. But defensively, you may not use that negate in that scenario. Now, this also starts to sort of talk about a few other things, because I said, oh, you can use power cards to defend your battle site. You can't use universe cards. So there's a lot of like Drax Armories and like Spartan Training Grounds. They may even say like team specifically. But even if you had like one in your deck and it was in your hand, you cannot combine that universe card with the power card to block something that attacked your battle site. Straight power cards, okay? So that's why, in reverse, if an opponent is attacking your battle site with a power card and they use one of their like Drac Armories to push it over an 8, they know in their head, and now you know in your head, that they would have to have an activator to actually defend that. And the activator they have to have, a battle site takes on the activator's attributes as if it was a character. So what I'm trying to say by that is, anything that involves like a teammate, your battle site ultimately can't use because it's not a teammate defending them and they're not a teammate for themselves, so they actually can't use it. So an example I'll just give you is, you're using the Outback and you decide I want both the AG and the AD for Jubilee. And they attack your battle site. You can use her AG, which is Avoid 1 Attack, Blinding Flare. But you actually can't use her teammate Avoid 1 Attack. That ultimately is not allowed because, the battle site's defending itself with the activator. There's no teammates involved here. So you have to remember those kind of cards when it comes to like, Colossus LO, things like that, of that nature. if it's not a personal defense, your battle site cannot use it. Now, it can use any personal defense, like, you have a negate under your battle site, you can use it defensively. You have a master mold under your battle site, you can use it defensively. Um, that's an EE special for those at home possibly don't know what a master mold is. Um, and yes, you can use the more ambiguous defenses like no universe cards or only universe cards or full lockouts that are like avoid one attack, may not be attacked for remainder of battle. But I think it's really interesting to have this perspective because I think people look at battle sites as ultimately this like impassable thing to kill. And, based off the current age of overpower, you'll notice very quickly that, like, people are placing out, people are always trying to get the card advantage moving forward. Well, if you can actually sort of like take that thought process, set it aside, and go, I only need 30 points of venture to destroy your battle site, and you're going to have anywhere from 13 to 20 cards in there. That's advantageous. And it's not even just the 30 that I want people to understand. When you're playing in a game like this and that situation starts to come up and you start going after somebody's battle site because you just see a plethora of team defense and, you realize you're not going to be able to penetrate much through their team. When you start getting someone's battle site up to like 20 points, you're going to start to see them conceding real quick. And then when they don't concede in the next round, you're going to see them holding all these power cards to sort of attempt to like fend off your last few attacks at this battle site. And all of a sudden the game can shift in a very, very quick moment. There's been several times I've even used this type of tactic moving forward. A fun scenario I'll bring up for you right now. I was playing actually, I believe it was a Battle for Boston. Again, I'm not going to mention names of players I was playing, but I'm playing this player who's playing an uber defensive deck revolving around Jubilee and Beyonder. And it's the first hand, and it's on camera, so you can even go back, and you can actually see my mind trying to figure this play out. And what ultimately happens is that my opponent places a DB special on Jubilee. Well, I place the teamwork right away. Now I'm first in this round, okay? So I start thinking about it and I'm like, okay, something tough is going to happen here. Either I'm going to have to throw this teamwork and just let it eat and let him kind of just like negate my turn with that DB. If I don't do that and I play some other action, he's just going to take that DB and then go get rid of my teamwork on the other side. So you can actually see my brain sort of like twisting and trying to think of a few different things in this situation. Ultimately, what I decide to do is I realize that that placed DB on his character cannot defend his battle site. And I really, really, really want the boost on the power card that's coming afterwards that I know is going to be thrown against his team because it'll boost over any of the power cards I see placed there. So this is where my mind starts going in this situation. So what I ultimately do is I throw the teamwork at his battle site. No intention to kill his battle site, no intention to sort of do anything of that nature. But what it does is it does not allow him to use that DB in that moment. He can't defend his battle site with that defensive card. What it also allows me to do then at that situation is now throw my additional attack at his team at the bonus, because that DB special now can't block the second attack in that teamwork string. Just an interesting scenario to sort of give you the idea of understanding what a battle site can do defensively and what it can't, and how there's interesting interactions that you can do and play in these spots that I just think, if you have that depth of knowledge, and we're going to work through it when the new book arises. But, when you have that depth of knowledge, you're almost at a tremendous advantage over your opponent, for the most obscure reasons. Um, so it's really interesting, just a sort of fun sort of side tidbit of information that you can always push your game to deeper, 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 and higher elevations by just truly understanding the rules through and through. I would never have thought to do that had I not known that DB can't block it, and that, you know, ultimately the DB can't block the second attack. So, these are the sort of things that you can ultimately do just knowing these knowledges. So, just again, really fun fact about, battle sites. Again, power cards and activators. Power cards and activators. That is how you defend battle sites currently in the game of Legacy OverPower. So I just want to sort of go, I guess, to my final thought in terms of obscure knowledge. Now, this is the one that I saw incorrectly played in the video. I'm not going to mention again any names of the people in the video, nor am I going to mention the 3 judges that ruled it and ruled it incorrectly. And I'm going to get into the nitty gritty, and this one's probably going to be the most in-depth and unique conversation that we're going to have. Dare I say, like the GOAT level topic of the day. Passing. In Overpower, you can do a unique thing. You can pass. Now, when you pass, you may not have any cards in your hand, not placed. You may not have any cards in your hand that can do an action. What does that mean? The best references usually fall around negates in this scenario, but I'm going to bring up a couple of things. That famous master mold, as I mentioned. In a situation where you want to pass, and I'm going to do them individually, and you have Sentinel's master mold, okay? You ultimately have to do things with these cards. Now, in a Sentinel's master mold situation, I would probably still have to call the judge to a certain degree and be like, do I have to do this if it's only on my side of the board? Now, I have got precedent in tournaments that the answer is yes. The situation was I had a Nightcrawler activator. The only play that I could do with that Nightcrawler activator, because it could not cross the board due to an event, was play Trick Transport on myself. Like the dumbest thing alive. Would love to have saved Trick Transport. But because Trick Transport was a card that was playable, even though it could not attack and cross the board, I was forced to play it. Not sure I agree with that 100%, but again, precedent and rulings have to move forward. I don't disagree with it 100%, but it would make the scenario I'm about to talk about the exact same. You have a Master Mold EE in your hand. That is, remove 1 power card or avoid 1 power card. A power card is on your current record, whether it be current battle or in your permanent record. The situation I have is you cannot pass wanting to use that defense later in the round on something. You would ultimately have to use it on the power card that's on your side. Now, a negate is more unique because a negate, you can't negate any of your own cards. But again, the situation would be you would actually be forced not to pass with that negate, but to negate a special that is actually played in your current battle or permanent record. Or if your opponent has a card in play, you would be forced to use that negate against one of their cards. Okay, so if they had a lockout on one of their characters, if they had a Stars and Garters in play, if you can use that negate, it must be used and you cannot pass. Now, this is not the scenario I saw, but I'm trying to let people understand. When you pass, it is very clear in the rule book. You may pass again, concede, or defend. Now, the word defend, I think, is where people don't understand things a whole lot when it comes to that. A lot of people think defend means defensive action. It does not. You may pass again, you may concede, or you may defend. Now I'm going to bring up the scenario that I saw on film. Player A has a Holocaust activator placed on their home base. I'm assuming Team OP, obviously. Okay? So player A has a Holocaust activator placed to their home base. They elect to pass. Now, the Holocaust is placed. If a card is placed, you are not forced to play it in the same mannerism that I just spoke about, i.e. the negate or the EE, or dare I say, any sort of dual card that may have a dual purpose. If you can play it, you have to play it, but only if it's in your hand. If the card is placed, player A, like they elected to, passed, which they are allowed to do. Okay, they had no more cards in their hand, all their cards were placed, and they passed. What I want you to get in your mind right now for this scenario is the Holocaust was placed on their home base. Okay, now I'm just going to assume, and for the purpose of this thought project, they have the avoid and the negate under for Holocaust. Okay, in this situation, this is what happened. Player A passed with the Holocaust placed. Player B then plays Morlock's Caliban. Now, I'm using my hands like this for a reason. Player A, player B. Okay, here's the space between, or the astral plane as it's called now. Okay, so player A has a Holocaust placed. Player B, after player A passes, plays a Callisto, or not Callisto, plays a Caliban from Morlocks. Okay, now Caliban from Morlocks states you may go and get any activator card from your deck. Interesting moment, because player B actually looks at player A and kind of goes like, gives a sense like, is this okay? Already in this interaction, player A may not negate that Caliban. Okay, I'm holding these hands up for a reason. Caliban never crosses this board. Okay, Caliban stays over here and is just doing things for player B at this point in time, who's allowed to do whatever they want still because they have not passed. Ultimately, player A allows the Caliban to go through, which, again, they had no choice in the scenario, but player B kind of was given the impression they did let it go through. Player A passes again. When you pass, you may pass again, concede, or defend. Now, again, these hands are up for a reason, okay? Player A passes again. Player B then goes, well, I went and got my Onslaught activator, and I'm going to kill one of my own characters. One of my own characters on this side of the board. Player A is not allowed to negate that Onslaught card at this particular point in time. Player A is allowed to defend, but not do a defensive action. Okay? So in both of the examples that player B does, both the Caliban and the Onslaught kill on their own character, player A with that placed Holocaust card is not allowed to say, I negate either of those actions. And I bring this up because I know a lot of people are like, well, that's interesting. I would never have thought that interaction could occur. And of course, we base things off precedent. We base things off history of the rules until something else comes out to change these rules. The precedent I reference now is, and this game is also on tape, and you can feel free to go back and watch it. I believe it's the first OP Cup that we are refilming. And I believe I'm playing in the quarterfinal round. Okay? In the quarterfinal round, you can see the moment happen. My opponent passes. I immediately get up from the table. I walk over to the judge, who is the current man in charge of the rules. So I will set that precedent out there as well. And I go, my opponent has passed. I would like to draw 3. They have a placed negate. They're not allowed to negate my draw 3. The judge thinks about it. The judge understands passing. And the judge agrees. I then proceed to go back to the table. And I draw 3. My opponent, you can hear the commentary and they go, oh, he allows it. But I already knew, and again, I went for a pre-ruling as opposed to trying to play something and then not having it work out in my fashion. And then ultimately now my opponent knows a card, my opponent knows a strategy, those sort of situations. I do actually highly recommend this if you are in a tournament, you're about to make a play you're not sure of. Prejudge it as opposed to post-judge it. You can fall into a bad scenario if you start to reveal cards and things along those lines. So in that particular situation, I draw 3. Now, at that point, that was my action. My opponent may pass again, concede, or defend. Now, again, I know people are going to probably feel a ways about this. Defend and defensive action, they're two different things. They're completely two different things. And the rule book clearly states defend. So in this situation, again, you can try to say gray zone, you can try to say this, you can try to say that. But not only does the ruling just flat out say, and I know for a fact we're all about words and what they mean now. The word defend does not mean a defensive action. Okay? So, again, some of this may change as we move forward and we get the Holy OP book. Some of it may not. As the rules stand now, these are 3 of the more obscure situations. I want you to know what the precedent is. I want you to know what the ruling should be, not what the ruling was in that situation. It's very clear in the rule book. It's very clear tournament precedent that's been set. It's very clear in terms of, how it all sort of plays out for these 3 obscure rules. I'm not going to say by any means the OverPower rulebook is anyway a clear, easy read by any means. And usually, the number one thing I hear from players who come to like tournaments and things along those lines is, oh, I didn't know that, or, that situation's weird, or, I can even say like, I bring up different scenarios, that have altered the rules or changed things in ways, because the old rule set has been fandangled by a lot of different groups. What today is and what yesterday was could be two completely different things. When we came back in the Renaissance era, a power leech hitting a Stars and Garters was considered successful, and you would do the discards. Then ultimately that got changed and a new precedent was set, which is always fine in the grand scheme of Overpower. That's always the way games will work. Rule sets will change. A rule book should always be a living document. It should never be like, here is my commandments. It should always be understood that a game can shift through either meta play or through new cards or this and that. And, I would hope that as LRG moves forward, they understand that there may be scenarios where you have to, ban this card or alter the text of this card or change something in a lot of mannerisms. I really want everything in terms of this idea to sort of move forward. And it's, again, I push back to the initial thought of, it's you players out there that are continuously bringing up these rule interactions and rule plays and just great conversation. And I tell all of you to try to know the rules as best as possible. One of the hardest games to sort of like figure it all out is very much like the Othello of CCGs. It's a minute to learn the game, but then it takes you a lifetime to sort of figure out all these sort of nuances. And, sadly, a lot of people will lose a tournament game based off these. I'm hoping that as you watching this now won't lose a tournament game moving forward. Based off any of these sort of interactions or situations. This is pretty much where I was going with most of those situations and examples. Again, sadly, I think the rules or the judges in that particular tournament ruled that last interaction wrong. But again, it's, as they've said on the Discord, sometimes it depends on who your judge is, their depth of knowledge, their understanding. And again, most of these guys were just playing in tournaments. So like they're half hearing a scenario, they're half understanding, they're half caring when it comes to, maybe they're in a pivotal match themselves, so you can't ever take it out on somebody in that situation. I know as we move forward, they have stated there will be actual like designated judges for things, that hopefully will understand the rule book a lot better. I think whoever judges any of the legacy events this year, with the mishmash of new rules meeting old rules meeting precedents, it's just going to be a unique scenario. It's going to be some muddy waters, and we're going to wade through them all together, my friends. That I promise you in the grand scheme. But yeah, just sort of like keep the rule set in mind. Understand that within days, quoted, we will be receiving the rulebook itself from LRG. So we will be able to sort of get into a deeper sort of like appendix to this podcast where I will start to at least try to disseminate some of the rulings that would happen potentially towards the legacy game. And of course, we will discuss the modern game as well, as that is fast approaching, and that will be very, very much probably, I would say, the format that will be played the most through new players and for financial, profit. I just want to take a quick minute, and I want to thank, I do see that Tyler Bertrand, he is one of the main designers now with LRG. He works very closely with Dave on Dave's Decrees, and I just want to thank him for coming in. I'm sure he may have said some things in terms of this rule I don't agree with, this rule that. Again, I'm stating the rules that they are right now in terms of the precedent, in terms of the way they are, in terms of you understanding that should you go to a tournament, this is how things are in the current format and situation. Now, obviously, I'm going to be pay very close attention to these three particular rules as we move forward. Uh, and if anything changes on these exact three rules, I will be the first to tell you and to explain what those changes would be for your knowledge moving forward. Because again, I'm always just trying to help you. I'm trying to get the community, you as an individual, to sort of like elevate your mind into that overpower mindset. Quick question period, my friends. As I said, we're not going to do a 2-hour episode today. I just wanted to cover those three very unique, obscure rulings. So please, at the end of the day, if you have any questions in regards to those rulings, if you have any questions about overpower in general, I feel personally that I can help. And of course, like I said, you have one of the, designers slash rule people of the new game in the room right now. So throw out any questions. Of course, whether they be to me or Ty. I see my friend Phil Keffer's in the room as well. So another great player of old who understands the rules through and through, at least in the current format, and the way we've been playing for the last several years. So, Howard, I see your question there. And I did see earlier in the chat that you mentioned that would not work. I don't see why that wouldn't work. To me, that's an interesting question. Howard's question is, can I win a spiritual victory playing an X-Man FF on my last character with 15 points? So the X-Men FF states you get +2 to some sort of power grid, maybe energy, intellect, -5 points off your character. I think that's all it states. Might state another line there. Ultimately, what Howard's trying to say is if I have one character who's at 15 left and I play that card to drop their points below 15, and killing my final character, can I get the spiritual or Pyrrhic victory in that moment? I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. I would also put that card in akin with maybe Silver Samurai's MOE that was just released as well, which is like a personal onslaught kill where you lose all the venture points as well as kill your own character. So to me, I could understand that would work. Now, I would be very interested as to why they told you that wouldn't work. I don't see why playing that card on my final character, dropping them to that death threshold, and winning the victory in that moment, I don't see the contradicting, logic to it, at least in that situation. I'm I'm assuming based off the commentary that I'm seeing that maybe if you kill your last character, there's a scenario where you wouldn't win the venture. Again, I'd love to see where in black and white that it says, you can't kill your last character and why that would affect the venture round. However, I will say right off the bat, I have seen people pull up some of the most unique, craziest, obscure rule confrontations that I've ever seen and been like, wow, that's like in the monumental rule book. Like, blows my mind. So I could easily see a rule written out there that says, should you be the cause of your final character's death, you lose venture for that round. It's wild, like that's when I reference your last character going into reserve and not having any more frontline characters. Like, that's a rule in a rule book. Like, nobody would have ever thought that. It was actually a great player of old who pulled that moment out of nowhere. And basically, beat another person in a pretty high profile tournament by stating, like, no, that's the rule. They actually went and pulled up the rule book, and that is how it ended up being. Really, really quite. Oh, okay. So there we go. So see, again, amazing. This is exactly the type of, people we want in the chat. As much as, my knowledge of the game goes so deep, especially with experience and playing, it's not always necessarily the fine nitty gritties of meta rules. There is a meta rule 131 that states if you are kill your last character, you lose venture. So these are the situations that are really unique. Now, the one thing I will say about meta rules in general, another meta rule was brought up in a rules conversation that happened recently in regards to, activators, how they interact with the special and so on. And I will sort of say that people need to understand, though, sometimes these meta rules were actually written, before things even became a thought. So, like, for example, the meta rule that was brought up was meta rule 44 in regards to an interaction with activators. My statement to that was meta rule 44 was written before battle sites were even a thing, so it's interesting, that we fall into this sort of scenario. And that is kind of where Overpower's been for a lot of years. Gray areas where people are doing their best to sort of come up with logical thoughts. But, it's always been a community effort. And, now obviously LRG taking over and, their word at least being law, in terms of, any modern format or anything of their release, it gets into a situation where, I hope we've handed the baby over and, you're taking care of it. And we will all find out within the next couple of days exactly where that goes. I personally, before we kind of get into more here, I personally think, reading the text and reading actually the comments of this podcast is probably going to be very interesting to a lot of people. I highly recommend it. If you're finished this podcast now, go back, scroll through all the comments. We have some really brilliant people who know rules, who know the way things in Overpower go. So it'll be really, really a great read for you. I think, we're at the point where I don't see any other further questions. Rules have been a hot topic as of lately. Again, I just wanted to sort of point out 3 more obscure, weirder rules that actually do come up a lot more than you may think in the game of Overpower. So I appreciate you, friends. Thanks for joining me. Keep thinking Overpower, deck building, and, getting to the top of the mountain. It's all we're trying to accomplish here, friends. I appreciate you all for joining me. This is the Overpower Mountain podcast, and I'm your host, the OPGOAT. So you have a good night, and get out there, get on the boards, be communicative, be pushing for clarity, be pushing angles, look at card interactions, look at how they work, don't just settle for answers, and ultimately become the best player you can by knowing the rules of the game you want to perfect. You can learn rules either through studying them or you can learn them through experience. And I want you to do both, because to get to that top of the Overpower Mountain, you're going to have to know this game in through and through. New game, old game, whatever format you wish to play, I want you to be the best at it. I want you to push yourself. And obviously keep listening to these podcasts, because I'm always just going to give you a little cheat mode here or there in the grand scheme. Thank you again for everybody who joined me. every single person who watches this, whether it be live or afterwards. And we'll be back, my friends, next Wednesday at 8, and there are a bunch of new videos coming out that I'm just going to sort of flood you with some overpower content as we move into this next era. So look forward to the player portal that's coming out. I look forward to the rule book, and have a good night, everybody. Let's chat soon.